You don't really think about dying until the moment you know it's happening. For me, that moment came in a dusty courtyard in Wardak Province, Afghanistan. March 2013. The sun was just cresting the mountains. We were in the middle of our morning comms check when everything turned red. I heard the first shot crack behind me, then a second, then a third. Before I could even turn, a wall of gunfire erupted 20 feet away. It wasn't the Taliban, it was one of ours. An Afghan national police officer we'd trained, fed, protected, had just climbed onto the back of a Ford Ranger, mounted a PKM, and opened fire on us at point-blank range. In that split second, every rule we'd followed, every ounce of trust we'd built, evaporated. This wasn't combat, this was betrayal. I sprinted to cover until I saw one of our infantry guys frozen in the open, eyes wide, completely exposed. I didn't think. I moved, got to him, turned my back to the shooter, and shielded him with my body. That's when the first round tore through my thigh. The second shattered my hip. The third and fourth followed fast, chewing through muscle and bone like paper. I dropped, blood soaking the dirt beneath me, my weapon out of reach. Every breath was fire. My training kicked in, but the math was brutal. I had maybe 8 minutes before I bled out. As chaos exploded around me, I did what I was trained to do. Tourniquet, then another, then one more. Still bleeding, I jammed gauze into my leg with my bare hands, through shredded skin and cracked femur. I thought I was going to die there, and if I'm honest, I made peace with that. But something inside me, call it stubbornness, call it faith, call it unfinished business, refused to quit. My name is Caleb Mercer, I'm a Green Beret, and this is the story of how I didn't just survive, I came back. I wasn't born a warrior. I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts, to a single mom who worked nights and slept days. Our apartment was cold in winter and loud in summer. I was the quiet kid, awkward, afraid, always the last picked for anything. But I remember one night flipping through channels when I saw it. A Marine in dress blues standing tall after climbing a mountain and defeating some mythical beast in a commercial. Cheesy? Sure. But to a 12-year-old boy with no compass, it was everything. I didn't chase the Marines, though. I chased the Green Berets. Because when I read about them, I didn't just see warriors, I saw teachers, builders, thinkers. Men who went behind enemy lines, not just to fight, but to lead others to fight for themselves. That idea stuck with me. I graduated college in late 2006. Afghanistan and Iraq were burning, and I didn't want to watch it on the news. I enlisted, went through the pipeline, and made it into Special Forces as an A-Team-B, weapons sergeant. Every Green Beret has a specialty, but we train to know everyone's job. So I obsessed. If I wasn't at the range, I was in the gym. If I wasn't learning demolitions, I was practicing trauma medicine. We weren't prepping for war. We were prepping to walk straight into hell and walk back out with our team intact. By 2012, I'd done 2 tours. Then came my third, Wardak Province, Afghanistan. Village stability operations was the mission. Train local forces, live among them, build trust. That meant no big bases, no towers, no defects, just busted up clay walls, sandbagged corners, and a few HESCO barriers. We slept in ruins. We loved it. You don't join special forces to sit behind concrete. You join to be out there. We were. And within weeks, the bullets found us. First it was a grenade, blew a hole in my back the size of a lemon. 6 weeks later, a sniper round to the face. Yeah, the face. But that's the job. You patch up, you stand up, and you go back out. We weren't invincible, but we were willing. And that's what makes what happened next so hard to swallow. It wasn't some Taliban ambush or IED. It wasn't some hardened fighter with a death wish. It was a man we had trained. A man who had eaten our food, fired our weapons, laughed at our jokes. On March 11, 2013, he turned his weapon on us, and in the blink of an eye, everything we thought we understood about trust, war, and loyalty was shattered. March 11th, 2013, Wardak Province, Afghanistan. The morning started like most others. Quiet, still, deceptively normal. We were prepping for a partnered operation with Afghan National Police and ANA units. We'd done this dozens of times before. But I remember something strange. A Ford Ranger pickup rolling into the compound, unannounced. It wasn't uncommon for leadership to show up, but this truck? It didn't sit right with me. The guy in the passenger seat, he didn't look like command, didn't speak, didn't move like a soldier. But I filed it away. We had work to do. Mission brief, comms check, final loadouts. I told myself I'd deal with that unease later. That was my mistake. We wrapped the briefing. I walked toward my vehicle, boots crunching the dry gravel underfoot. Halfway there, I heard it. Crack. One round, then another, then a storm. It took me a second to process. My first thought? Accidental discharge. Some nervous ANA kid maybe. Then I saw him. A man, Afghan police, standing on the back of that same Ford Ranger, up on the mounted PKM machine gun. He was aiming it directly at us, and he pulled the trigger. At 20 feet, that weapon doesn't shoot bullets. It tears people apart. I saw one of our infantry guys frozen 15 feet ahead of me, just standing there, like his brain couldn't compute what his eyes were seeing. So I ran, not away from the threat, toward him. I slammed into him, turned my back to shield him, and that's when I felt the first impact. Top of my right leg. It was like getting hit with a sledgehammer made of fire. I collapsed on top of him. And then came the next impacts. 3, maybe 4, all to my lower body. I didn't scream, didn't have time. I just started dragging us both toward the nearest cover, the corner of a Humvee. We tumbled behind it. There was a rifle on the ground. Someone had dropped it during the chaos. I grabbed it, chambered around, and fired toward the gunman. Poor shots. Desperate shots. But then, one of my teammates came around the corner, leveled his rifle, and dropped the shooter. We thought that was it. We thought the threat was neutralized. We were wrong. The gunfire wasn't an accident. It was the signal, a trigger. Suddenly, it felt like the world erupted. Rockets, machine guns, small arms fire, all from outside the compound walls, from rooftops, from alleyways we couldn't see. It was an ambush. A coordinated assault from 20, maybe 25 enemy fighters. They had the compound surrounded. We were being raked with fire. My teammates returned fire. Our support soldiers kicked in, rifles blazing. The chaos was total, but I wasn't fighting anymore. I was checking on the soldier I'd dragged with me. He was in shock, but alive. Then I looked down. My leg was shredded, flesh torn open, bone exposed, a river of blood running from where I was hit to where I lay. I'd seen this before, not in real life but in training videos. I knew what it meant. 8 minutes. That's how long I had, maybe less. I had maybe 8 minutes left to live. That's what my training told me. Exposed femoral artery, uncontrolled bleeding. You don't wait for help, you become your own medic. I reached for the tourniquet on my kit. My hands were trembling, coated in dirt and blood. But I got it on, tight, locked. Nothing changed. The bleeding didn't stop, not even slow down. I grabbed a second one, looped it higher, above the first, cinched it down until the pain became pure white, still leaking. I knew what that meant. This was bad, worse than I thought. One of my teammates made it to me, Reed. He knelt next to me, wide-eyed, no words, just that look. He dropped to work without hesitation. Tightened the tourniquets, got an IV line into my arm, pushed fluids, slapped my face when I started to fade. But I saw the truth in his eyes. He thought I was done. I told him, go help someone you can actually save. He ignored me. Thank God he ignored me. Then he was gone, moving to the next casualty. We had too many, and time was running thin. I was alone again, blood still pooling around me, dark red and warm. So I reached for the one thing left, gauze. I balled it up, made what we called a power ball. I loosened the tourniquet just enough and I shoved it deep inside my thigh. The pain was electric, worse than being shot, worse than anything. I hit bone and I kept going. I packed the gauze with my fingers, forcing it in past shredded muscle and splintered femur. Then I tightened the tourniquet again, hard. One more click, another. And that's when I blacked out. When I came to, I was cold, my uniform soaked in blood, my vision blurry. I couldn't hear much, just muffled gunfire and yelling. I dragged myself toward the others. I knew some of them were hit. I just wanted to be close. If I was going out, I wanted to go next to them. I reached Crawford. He'd taken a round to the shoulder. He looked at me, barely conscious. I squeezed his hand. That's all I could give him. Time passed like smoke, indistinct, unreal. Then finally I heard the distinct thump-thump of rotors. Bird inbound? Medics rushed in. I don't remember being lifted, but I remember someone holding my face between their palms. Stay with me, Caleb, we're not done yet. Then a whisper, broken and quiet, I love you, brother. That was when I realized, this might not be the end. Something flared inside me, rage, hope, survival. I wasn't out of the fight, not yet. On board the Bird, they dumped everything they had into me, epinephrine, pain meds, blood. I felt my heart hammering like it was trying to break out of my chest. Medics worked like men possessed. I made it to Bagram, barely. They took me straight into surgery, removed my foot first, then stabilized my leg, what was left of it. Machines kept me alive, tubes in my neck, chest, arms, but I was breathing. I'd made it through the first 90 minutes. The most critical window. They called it a miracle, but I didn't believe in luck. I believed in training, in the men beside me, in refusing to let the story end there. At Walter Reed, time lost its shape. Days blurred. Mornings started with the sting of cleaning wounds. Nights ended in pain meds and phantom sensations from a foot that wasn't there anymore. I was no longer a Green Beret on paper. I was a man with a missing leg, tubes in my chest, and a team of surgeons trying to hold me together. But even through the haze of morphine and depression, I made a promise, not to the army, not to the flag, but to the men I bled with. I was going to stand again. I was going to fight again. It sounded insane, even to me. You'll walk, the doctor said, but combat readiness, that's unlikely. I didn't care. That just meant they hadn't seen someone like me before. There was a moment early on when the First Lady visited the hospital, Michelle Obama. I was groggy, barely aware of where I was. She leaned over, whispered kind words, told me to stay strong. I interrupted her. Ma'am, I need you to do me a favor. She paused, surprised I could even speak. Tell your husband I'm still an asset. Don't give up on me. Her eyes filled with tears. So did my mother's, but I meant it, every word. The next year was war in its own right. Learning to move with a prosthetic wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Muscles I didn't know I had were burning. Falls became part of the routine. Pain was a companion. But I kept showing up, day after day, hour after hour, until the impossible started to shift. I wasn't limping anymore, I was running. By the end of the first year, I wasn't just passing standards, I was rewriting them. And then came the question, would I go back? Hell yes. It took 2 years, countless tests, and more signatures than I could count. But in the end, the answer was yes. I returned to Afghanistan. A one-legged Green Beret, back in uniform, back in the fight. At first, people stared. Policymakers called my name in Pentagon halls. Some questioned the risk, others called it reckless. I didn't care. Because when I stepped onto that tarmac in Kandahar again, when I looked into the eyes of the men I was about to deploy with, I felt whole. They didn't see a man missing a leg. They saw a teammate, a fighter. In the field, I proved it. I kept up. I pushed hard. I taught. I led. I wasn't there as a symbol. I was there to do a job. And every time I slung a rifle across my shoulder, I knew I wasn't defined by what I'd lost. I was defined by what I refused to give up. No medal could ever mean more than that. You know, people often ask me, if you could go back, would you do it differently? They think I'd want my leg back. Think I'd trade the pain, the surgeries, the endless nights of rehab, just to be whole again. But what they don't understand is this: losing my leg didn't break me, it revealed me. I look at my life now, my wife, my kids, my brothers in arms still out there fighting the good fight, the quiet moments, the loud ones. And I realize none of it would exist in the same way had I not gone through that fire. Because here's the truth most people never want to say out loud. Sometimes, pain is the price for clarity. I wouldn't undo it. Not because I enjoyed the suffering, not because I'm some glutton for punishment, but because of what came after. Perspective, purpose, peace. I was forged by the worst day of my life, and I carry it with me, not as a weight, but as armor. You see, we train for years in special forces to survive the worst. We prepare for ambushes, for betrayals, for blood. But no training prepares you for what comes after. The silence, the doubts, the days when you're not sure if you're still a warrior or just a memory in a uniform. That's the real fight. And I fought it. Not with guns, not with muscles, but with a decision. To show up every day, no matter how broken, no matter how tired, to still lead, still love, still live. I became something more than I was, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. So, no, I wouldn't change a thing. Because now when I look in the mirror, I don't see a man who lost a leg. I see a man who refused to lose his soul. And that, to me, is the definition of victory. If this story moved you, if it made you pause and think, don't let it end here. Hit the like button, subscribe for more untold stories of courage, loss, and the quiet strength that defines real heroes. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it, because sometimes the story you pass on might be the one that saves someone else.